Okay, I had done this podcast a while ago, but one of the uh, visitor to the channel, let's say, complained about how badly it was done. I'm sometimes lazy, no doubt about it, and I do this when I have free time as a hobby, but obviously there is no excuse for putting up poorly done podcasts when you're trying to present ideas. So I tried to find his name by going to my channel. It says I have 2 comments, but I cannot open the comments. So YouTube is a funny place in general. But anyway, this is about geothermal energy, and a nice article came out in the Vox about geothermal energy as something that's not being looked at very seriously but needs to be looked at. And then there is a visual guide that came from Visual Capitalist, which puts out very nice summary infographics that I sometimes use. So let's revisit this very important topic. I know as you go deeper into the earth, actually at the core you have temperatures of 6,000 degrees centigrade, which is the same as the surface of the sun. And we said when we did solar energy that in 1 second sun sends enough energy to last us for hundreds of thousands of years. And geothermal is similar, that if we can even capture 1% of it, as Vox article makes clear or points out, that will last us for a long time. And obviously we cannot drill all the way to the core, but that heat diffuses up the radioactive decay that's been going on since the earth formed, and you can just drill a little bit, few kilometers even, and find very hot temperatures. What does it mean? There is a lot of water in the system which can heat up and percolate up as it becomes water vapor and the pressure builds up, and sometimes it comes all the way to the surface like it does here in hot springs, geysers, and what are called fumaroles. I think you can look it up. Basically they are similar. So this is a natural body of water that is constantly being kept at hot temperatures. Smells sulfury sometimes, but you can see these macaques happily enjoying cold winter sitting in the hot spring. You can see the snow here, and you can see the frozen heads, but you can see steam coming out of the water as well. And these are very famous from Iceland, from Alaska, from Japan, and so on. In fact, Iceland has so much of this geothermal energy that it runs utility scale power supply out of geothermal power plants. Okay, this is one famous example, the Yellowstone National Park, where the Old Faithful bellows, spews out hot water every 57 minutes or so. So people line up to watch it, and I've been there. It's a fantastic sight. Again, it's a process that's going on inside that builds up pressure and vomits this hot water and a mix of lots of crushed rocks and other things out of the earth. So can we use this in any way? So this is from the Vox article. I hope I have cited it somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Okay, the DOI is there. So here we are looking at resource potential going in this direction, and you can see it jumps up here. So we will see what they are. And resource risk also goes up a little bit, and you can see where we are in the current and what is identified, what may be unidentified, in field, near field, and deep enhanced geothermal system. Okay, what are we looking at? In the conventional system, basically you have a heat pump that is running, geothermal is being used near the surface as a heat pump, where you pump in cold water and run it through some pipe system where you have some idea of how warm the temperatures are as you go deeper, and near surface there are places where you get plenty of hot temperatures close enough to the surface. Then you can bring up that hot water and you can use it for various purposes, and we'll see what those purposes are for these different methods in a minute. And then you have so that's the geothermal heat pump, or GHP, that's shown here. And this is hydrothermal, so this is in the identified sector, and then you get here. So obviously, as the water inside the Earth's crust, or you go below the crust, in the upper mantle begins to heat up, and it percolates up through all the pores in the rocks, and sometimes it gets trapped below a rock that will not allow it to go beyond, but sometimes it makes it all the way to the surface as a hot spring. Obviously you can use that for some purposes, so those are hydrothermal vents, but you can also do active extractions. For example, if you know that there is a pool of hot water just sitting there, then you can use what are called binary or flash power plants, and you can actually inject cooler waters down, let it heat up and then take it back out, and then you can do flash or binary power plant. What does that mean? Flash boiling is basically where you reduce the pressure suddenly so much that the temperatures of the water go up tremendously. It's a kind of boiling, and you increase the pressure, and obviously you can then use it to drive turbines and produce electricity, as you can see here, and that's the flash boiling. But the binary power plant, so in flash boiling you are using the water that's coming up, and you often release all the pollution, aerosols, chemicals, powdered rocks, etc. with it. Whereas binary power plants, what they do is they do use the water that's brought up this way, naturally heated by the geothermal energy, and then they heat another liquid that has a lower boiling point than water, or the water itself, and then you can obviously use that steam or whatever gaseous form of the second fluid to drive turbines to produce electricity. So you are still doing electricity production, but you are just doing it instead of hydroelectric, nuclear, etc. You are doing it with geothermal energy, which is available, and it's free, and you can run it in a way that you don't produce greenhouse gases and so on. So life cycle analysis should also work out, and it doesn't have intermittency problem like solar and wind, and it also can provide a base level of power generation all the time, unlike solar and wind, which have lots of fluctuations. Okay, so those are some details. You can also do a pure binary plant where you are doing enhanced geothermal systems. So again, you have cold water being pushed in, so you can bring up hot water in a production well, and you can do binary plant, so you use that hot water for boiling another liquid to produce electricity and put it on the grid. Whereas that's in field, that's where the hot water or the heat is available to pull up to run the binary power plant. But you can also do it near field, where you are not exactly where the hot heat source is, but you are close enough to still run a system to pump water and then let it heat up and bring it back up. So those are the injection wells here and here as well. Okay, so here you have other methods, that's the enhanced geothermal systems. You can also have direct use, of course, so you are going in this direction. One thing to remember is that to produce actually electricity, you need certain levels of water temperatures and pressures to be able to drive turbines or whatever else to produce electricity, mostly turbines. So you don't always have that temperature, so you can just use it as a heat pump, but you can also directly use the energy gotten this way to run whatever. We will see that people run fisheries, farming, food production or storage, and so on and so forth. Okay, so obviously resource potential is very high for direct use. It's not available everywhere. This is another thing, as we will see in a minute. Resource risk is slightly high here, and this is where the future goes towards deep EGS, where the cost goes up as you go deeper and deeper. If you go a few kilometers, you may always find 150 degrees centigrade, and then you can use an injection well and production well and so on. But you also have incredibly warm rocks which can produce supercritical water, which means it's at such a high temperature and pressure that it doesn't even behave like a normal gas anymore. But to use that, you will need special materials to deal with it. So that's what we have to remember. Okay, so here is the power generation aspect and the direct use aspect. There is a geovision analysis that is provided to estimate all these things. I won't go into the details, but you can read the Vox article for that. So in here you can look at the temperatures. Depending on how deep you go, you can get very high temperatures like 371 degrees centigrade. We'll see this in a minute. So that can get into supercritical range. So you can have flash or dry steam geothermal power plants. Flash boiling is again that. Dry steam is basically you have such high temperature and volume, some combination, that it's basically steam, but the number of water molecules is very small. It's not like a cloud where water vapor is saturated, or a steam bath where you can feel the steam. You cannot see the person ahead of you and so on. So dry steam is exactly what it says. It's steam, but still it's so dry that the humidity is very low. Okay, and then we talked about binary geothermal plants as we go deeper. Sorry, not deeper, cooler temperatures. So let's start here. 10 degrees C, 38 degrees C, you can do geothermal pumps, building, heating and cooling, direct use that we talked about, and you have fabric dyeing and pulp and paper processing and lumber drying over these ranges of temperatures, concrete block drying, fish farming, greenhousing where you grow vegetables, flowers, etc. Food processing in this range, so those are still direct uses. Cement and aggregate drying as well, so that's cement drying in this range, concrete block drying, and cement and aggregate drying here. And you can do hydrogen production as you go to higher temperature, because you can actually begin to have enough energy to do electrolysis and produce split water and so on and so forth. Okay, so that gives you a sense. So let's look at the first method, which is the conventional method, which relies on natural processes where you have heat and gas from the magma that's being generated. So that's at 300 degrees centigrade. You have permeable fractures naturally occurring in the system where the pressure builds up and steam begins to percolate up, heat and water. So you can see the thermal feature here and thermal isotherms, sorry, and you can see the depths here, 1 kilometer or 3,300 feet. Yeah, so 3.3 meters, 3.3 feet per meter, and so on. So there is upflow, but then you have a reservoir cap rock which doesn't allow it to come out any further, except where you have a steam discharge of fumaroles happening. So you can see 200 degrees centigrade isotherm here, 100 degree isotherm here. So you can do geological estimates of these with the GV analysis that talked about here, geovision analysis, and you can obviously have a production well where you directly tap into the hot water through the reservoir cap rock and then run your systems as we talked about. Or you can also run a power plant where you are actually having an injection well to get energy out, heat out, and run power production. Okay, you of course have hot springs where you are bathing, monkeys are bathing, or you are people cook in these hot springs. You can see examples of people cooking rice, boiling eggs, and so on and so forth. So geothermal power generation then, as we said, directly using geothermal in this way is limited geographically because it's in very few places, and there are plants that are using it already. So this is currently installed or under development in yellow. So you can see Oregon, California, Nevada, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Alaska is famous for its hot springs as well. So I won't read the details, but basically this is looking at geothermal energy being produced at the levels, so capacities in megawatts. You can see the numbers there. Okay, so main point is they are geographically limited. So what are the top 10 geothermal countries with installed capacities as of 2019? This is from 2016, by the way, doesn't matter. United States is very high. United States is blessed with oil, gas and geothermal, right? Indonesia, not so bad. Philippines, but you can see the drop. This is almost 50% of that. Turkey, New Zealand and Iceland shows up here, but it's a very small country with barely 300,000 people, I think, maybe even 250,000 or so. So this is called the 1 gigawatt country club here above New Zealand. So wherever you have plate tectonic activities and other things, you may have natural source of geothermal energy. So you have to see whether that comes with risks of earthquakes as well, because there is a lot of debate about the potential for micro earthquakes or earthquakes, and of course groundwater contamination and so on, when you have active injection wells that are doing fracking type of things. You remember in fracking we are injecting water to push out shale and other things that are trapped in places that you cannot naturally drill into, and that does cause micro earthquakes. And there is a lot of debate about whether fracking is good or bad, and presidential candidates can lose if they ban fracking and so on. And it is argued that this is much safer, and this is not bringing out any fossil fuel, and this is not emitting CO2 and so on. Okay, so the second one is called enhanced geothermal system, as we talked about. So just to look at a few more details, you have an injection well where fluids are injected into the earth for continuous energy recovery. So there is a base flow of energy. Injection creates fractures resulting in an EGS reservoir, and then heated fluid produced is brought back to the surface as a product into the production well, and then of course heated fluids are recovered at the surface for energy production. We talked about flash or binary, so you know how that works. So here is an example of Saarlach geothermal plant, which is a binary geothermal plant in Munich, Germany. Okay, so it has a secondary fluid that gets boiled. So about the fourth method, which is the supercritical rocks and water steam at incredibly high temperatures. If you have 200 degrees centigrade, let's say you are producing about 120 megawatt gross, that's less than 55% of them are less than 10 kilometer deep. Remember, temperature keeps increasing as you go deeper, so you need to know where the energy may be in before you drill, but the cost goes up if you keep drilling as well, right? So the geothermal leases of 30 kilometers square, you can read up on the details. So those are 18 injection wells, and production wells are 24, so you are getting about 85 kilogram per second of fluid. Whereas if you got into the supercritical temperature range of 400 degrees C, we talked about 371 in that infographic before, so you have 106 megawatt gross, and you have just 2 production wells at 60 kilogram per second fluid, and you have 1 injection well with 1 square kilometer geothermal leases. So that's 33% less than 20 kilometer deep. So obviously to reach such temperatures you have to go deeper, but as I said, it comes with challenges of the kind of materials you want to use to manage such temperatures. But higher the temperature and higher the pressure of the steam, easier it is to produce actually electricity, okay, as opposed to directly using for heating water or fisheries or cement drying and other things that we talked about. The advanced geothermal systems are still not fully functional, but there are some, like the Ever loop, that is running in many places where suitability is estimated. So these are the geothermal sedimentary basins, and you can see that it has a closed loop basically. So there is a pipeline. Here you had production well and the injection well and the production well were separate, and there was no direct connection between them, so it's not a loop. Whereas the advanced geothermal systems, imagine running a complete pipeline above that is sending in the water is an injection well as before, let's say to about 2 kilometers, and doing some heating as we said before, and bringing it back up to produce energy, and then sending it back. So it's a closed loop, no emissions, no pollution being released, etc. But does this work? There are lots of challenges that you can read about whether this cycle can really work. So the Ever loop, the Ever is a company from Canada, I think. They have a system that is at a demonstration pilot scale, I think. You can read up. But they are gung-ho about this method, and they think it will be in place fairly soon. So here is just information about what temperature ranges you get at 10 kilometers. So you can see at 10 kilometers you get large areas of 350 degrees C and above, which is very good for producing energy. But there are other lower temperatures available, which depending on cost benefit analysis can still run direct use or energy production. So now we'll move to the visual guide from Visual Capitalist, which is the symbol here. So I hope I have reference to them somewhere. Sorry for using your infographic without a link, guys, but you can Google this under Visual Capitalist, you will get. Okay, so how it works, we already talked about. Reservoirs of hot water can be found deep within the Earth's surface. When accessed via a well, this water rises under its own pressure, so you don't need anything, you just need to put a pipe inside. In hot springs, obviously, it has found a way to percolate up by itself. So pressure decreases as hot water reaches the surface, causing it to turn into steam. That's the flashing. And steam is then used to run turbines to produce energy, to run generators or put it onto the grid. So these are the generators. Steam is used to spin a turbine which is connected to the generator, and then excess steam is condensed back into water as it passed through the cooling tower, and then you can put it back into the ground, knowing where you are putting it. So water is pumped back into the earth to restart the process, so that you have sustaining the process. So here is the mantle, and you know where the energy is coming up. Where is it being used? At the end of 2021, global geothermal power generation amounted to 16 gigawatts. Only a handful of countries have surpassed 1 gigawatt milestone. As we said, there is a gigawatt club that includes just a handful of countries. So let's see. US is again the biggest one with installed capacity in 2021 at 3.7, but as we discussed before, and as the Vox article makes clear, this is not getting much attention because there are all these other sources that are already well established in terms of infrastructure, and easily, you know, if you drill oil in one place, you can move it anywhere with tankers and ships and so on. But geothermal has to be used locally, even though you produce energy and you can transmit energy, but that's not as efficient as shipping oil and gas, right? So Indonesia, Philippines, so many of these countries lie along the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area where the majority of the Earth's volcanic activity occurs. So you need energy from the core to find its way up, and that happens where you have lots of tectonic activities which typically are associated with volcanic activity as well, right? So Turkey, New Zealand, Mexico, Italy, Kenya, Iceland, Japan, and the rest of the world, as we mentioned already. So this is the ring of fire lines, the edge of the Pacific Ocean. As you know, Japan is always living under the threat of tsunamis, earthquakes and tsunamis, and Fukushima spooked them out. But geothermal is something they are producing, not at a very large scale, but they also have much smaller land as a whole compared to someone like US or Indonesia. Okay, Indonesia is spread over here with some 23,000 islands and so on. So there are other details, comparisons to other types of clean energy. Geothermal energy accounts for just 0.5% of the world's total renewable energy capacity as of now, at 3,000 gigawatts. Installed capacity, total percentage of the total hydro dominates. You have solar and wind, but these are growing very fast, and these are facing problems because shifts in rainfall is going to create problems for many. Three Gorges Dam, which is the most massive structure in the world, still relies on hydro, but you know that you don't know how rainfall will shift. So 5% is other, 0.5% is geothermal. Benefits and disadvantages: this is always available, unlike intermittent sources. Solar and wind has a smaller footprint, so 88% less space than a solar farm to produce 1 gigawatt of electricity. Higher upfront costs, and locations are restricted because there are very few places where geothermal is easily available. Geothermal is a unique and reliable source of clean energy, but adoption will remain limited until more cost-effective methods are developed. Okay, here is the levelized cost of electricity for dollars per megawatt hour. Super hot EGS, which we talked about, supercritical, still not fully functional, can be cheap. Onshore winds at $56 per megawatt hour. Enhanced geothermal systems today at 80, but yeah, I think this is the potential to bring it back down to 80. And solar PV available, so this is, let's say, just the range from 80 to 120. Solar PV available weight 85, whatever it is, just compare the numbers. Advanced nuclear at 96, natural combined cycle, so this is 99. Basically we are saying geothermal can be cheap and it is limited in space, so that has to be kept in mind. But also people get freaked out by nuclear. Not everybody wants a nuclear plant in their backyard. Okay, so I have redone it. The person who pointed out the issues or expressed unhappiness, I hope he finds this again and watches it and gives me a thumbs up. Okay, so always good to keep up the quality, which I do, but always good to hear from readers who may be better experts than I am, because I'm covering a lot of topics just to give you information. I'm not an expert on many of these things, but I do homework and report them as as well as I can, let's say, but sometimes I end up being lazy. Okay, see you in the next topic.